comfortable this feels. I think I made it a little long. All right, you're listening to my new opening music. I am Sam Irvin. This is the Irvin Music Studio weekly Wednesday live stream called 8 Note, or 8 parentheses PM Note. My small studio here in Asheville, North Carolina is the hub for my company, where I offer private music lessons, event entertainment, and various sound production projects, whether it's composition coaching or recording, or my own creative projects. I put this live stream in that third department. This live stream is an opportunity for me to play music for fun again, and get into the sandbox and just be creative with the jams in the second half of the show, and also to get better acquainted with the musical community, whether I'm catching up with old friends or getting to know a new acquaintance better. Like today, I've got Benjamin Falcon coming on, and I'm glad to have him. Let's get right to it. Maybe I need to make this a little more concise. What do you think about my new opening music?
I really like the length of that one right there. That was perfect. That was perfect length.
Okay, good.
The first one's fine. I think it just depends on when you start talking over it, kind of, maybe. So maybe volume is the only thing you need to think about.
I think so. Yeah, I'll go back tomorrow and
have a fade, a built-in kind of fade on the volume or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's tricky. I'll get an intern one day who can do the engineering.
These are the heady early days.
That's right. Yeah, I'm bringing YouTube back to a place of sitting in a basement with two dudes just talking to each other.
Well, it's a sweet setup you've got down here. Definitely got the nice eye candy, electronically speaking.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's like sort of a Moog wall. And then I've got the set that you'll be behind tonight. You're Benjamin Falcon, a drummer in town and a singer. I didn't know what other hyphenates to put next to your name. You're a band leader. You've got
sometimes
your trio.
I do stuff. Yep, lead a couple groups. Kind of one of those things where I have a name for a band concept, but it's really not a band. It's like I'll book a gig, and then depending on how much they're paying, I'll say, okay, I can hire 3 guys, or I can hire 4 guys, or 5 guys, or gals, whatever the case may be. And so I'll call it Falcon, followed by the number of people. So it's like Falcon 3 or Falcon 4 or Falcon 5. I haven't gotten any higher than that yet, but maybe the pay will get better around.
Hey, fingers crossed. Yeah.
But
you're building that brand recognition. I like putting my name on stuff too with Irvin Music Studio.
It's kind of a lazy move on my part. I think I get some ridicule for it occasionally, but hey, it's all I've got right now. But
let me do one. There's not much format to the show, but one tradition is to check and make sure that we've got sound coming through, and we do. It's crystal clear. Again, no engineer yet, so it's good to make sure we're not muted
like the chef.
The whole time.
You got to taste your meal as you're cooking.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just right at the moment. So yeah, what's on your docket? Everything's sort of slowing down for me right now. What sort of gigs are you generally doing? And I got so many questions for you because we've only talked a few times, but didn't you go to UNCA?
I did.
Too?
I went to UNCA, graduated in 2009, and had got a jazz performance degree with the drum set as the main instrument, and it was a great time. Loved that school. Loved my professors, and a lot. Several of them are still there, so fond memories, and certainly proud to have gone there. And that program has really blossomed quite a bit, since the days I was there. So it's a cool thing we have in Asheville for sure.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. Oh, sorry.
No. Yeah, that's part of your experience as well, right?
Yeah, it's a great school, and it really took a hard turn up, like in that blossoming of the program. About halfway through, when I was there, Bears and Felix showed up, and they got the BFA going, which I didn't get to do.
It's a sore subject.
Yes.
I'm like, what's you guys are gonna make this a Bachelor of Fine Arts like right after I leave? That's not fair.
Yep.
But it's okay. But yeah, musically speaking, right now, I kind of bounce around a little bit. I've in the past several years have really gotten into a spot where I do a lot of substituting for other bands, drummers when they can't make it, or a lot of gigs where it's an ensemble that maybe be comprised of familiar musicians, but it's not an ensemble that's ever played before or maybe will ever play again, And so there's a lot of those little pickup gigs that I'll do. But right now I'm doing Thursday nights at the One Stop, and that's been going on for 2 years and change. And that is a Fish tribute band. So we have a lot of fun with that, and the music is challenging, and it gives me a great chance to work on technique and also singing and playing, and definitely keeping chops up and all that. And then I've got the Emerald Empire organization where I'll do weddings in the region, usually in North Carolina, but sometimes in some other nearby states. And that is an organization with, probably in our kind of little sector, 100 plus musicians that they'll kind of pick and choose from and make an ensemble per event. So you might end up playing with folks that you've played with before. You might end up playing with somebody you've never met. And similar kind of to that local combo scenario, you may never see those people again, or it could become a more familiar arrangement. But so there's that, and that kind of keeps me busy. And then aside from that, I'll do a little bit of touring with Abby Bryant and the Echoes. And we'll go and do regional, weekend tours occasionally, a week or so. And you mentioned some singing. I'm doing a concert next Thursday at the ISIS, and that is going to be a Paul Simon tribute.
Oh yeah, that's going to be great.
And while I am almost always gigging as a drummer, and I will sing from behind the kit, this gig I'll be just singing and fronting the band, so that'll be a little bit more unusual than my general gigging life.
Yeah. Do you feel ready for it, to get out from behind? Have you done anything like that before?
Well, I did theater as a kid, music theater, and just singing a lot over the years from behind the drum set. And I think maybe in at UNCA, I once had a funny situation where, maybe I shouldn't say funny, but there was an ensemble where there was a singer, and at the last minute he had to leave town to go to a funeral, and it was my kind of arrangement. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll sing lead, and we'll have somebody else play drum set. And that was probably if I recall, the first time I ever had done that, where I was just like fronting a band just as a singer. So that was actually at UNCA for one of my like senior recital type pieces. And then and then we did it at One World West, this Paul Simon tribute, back in July. And so that was, I was like, this is a different feeling, being in front, being at the tip of the spear,
Right. Yeah.
So do I feel ready? I feel ready because it went well at One World West, and we had no rehearsal. And this is a group of extremely talented musicians, and so if they're calling me back and saying, "Hey, we're going to do it again, and we're going to a bigger stage and a bigger show," then that seems to be a vote of confidence. So I'm like, all right, I can do this. I just it'll be even better, ideally.
Who else do we have in that? Jonathan Lloyd's part of that group, right? He's a friend of the show.
He is, he's the band leader for the J. Lloyd mashup over Mondays at One World West, and super talented musician, singer, trombone player, band leader, and a great asset to the community as far as somebody that is doing a lot of work, selfless work, to provide gigs that are high quality as well as entertainment that's high quality, and being selfless about how he not only compensates people but spends energy to create these situations.
Yeah, definitely. He's a force.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
Sure. But it sounds like you are too. I mean, you've got a lot of irons in the fire. You're staying busy.
Well, it's kind of the necessity, I guess, if you're trying to make music, uh, part of your career, or a viable, living, then you really have to come at it from different angles, as you know,
Yeah,
in order
absolutely.
to not just make ends meet, but also to fulfill yourself sometimes as far as all the different interests you have,
Yeah, I know winter, I'm really looking forward to things settling down right now because winter is sort of a time for me to get back into the creative stuff and, you know, stop doing learning covers and guitar arrangements for specific events and weddings.
Yeah.
Um, and get a little bit more insular. Uh, so I'm definitely excited about that. But yeah, there are a lot of different ways that you have to approach it. Do you do any teaching or
You
any
know,
other like music adjacent stuff?
teaching has always been something that I've never done a lot of. I've done a little bit over the years here and there, and one of my troubles has been uh, maintaining students, because it seems at a certain level, with drums, in my experience, a lot of people who are self-taught, you know, will get to a certain point, and then they need people to kind of help, shape them up and correct their habits, etc., show them some tricks to unlock some secrets. But when I think most of my students have been really early in the beginner stage, and one of the challenges is that people will go to a lesson and give them something to work on, and they'll go home and they may or may not work on it, and when they come back, if they haven't mastered that concept, naturally they'll feel embarrassed because you're teaching it to them again, or they're still kind of where they were, and sometimes that'll happen more than once, and it often leads to people kind of just backing away and thinking either, oh, this is a waste of my money because I'm not getting anywhere, or I think maybe sometimes out of embarrassment because they're like, I'm not being diligent, and I'm embarrassed to come back and yet again not have figured out how to do that thing that I was supposed to work on. But I also think it's partly, not been my pursuit. I haven't like tried to ever maintain a student roster. It's kind of always been happenstance. Like people will say, "Hey, would you teach my son?" or "Hey, would you give me lessons?" And it just hasn't ever been really a long-lasting arrangement.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm familiar with both of those problems. That balance of not shaming the students, is
Yeah.
something that takes diligence, because I'll find myself mentioning practice, the word practice, like three times that lesson instead of two, and look the face of my student just drop like, oh, I know I should be practicing more, and they start beating themselves up. It's difficult, but it really does just come down to that grind, and it's your responsibility as a instructor to say the word practice a lot.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't. Certainly at certain points in my life, I'm like, hey, if you want to come back and learn the same thing over and over again, I'm okay with that. But if you want to keep paying me to do that, but I certainly understand why a parent would be like, I don't know if this is a good use of my money. If we're not actually making any progress.
Yeah, that's tricky too. Getting the parental involvement is pretty necessary, especially for those very beginners. Because I mean, I didn't want to practice when I was growing
Accountability,
up.
and that kind of harkens back to the self-taught, self-starter types that kind of push through that early awkward stage on the instrument just because of their desperation to be able to play.
Yeah,
And so if you don't have that thirst, it can really take a lot of prodding and a lot of somebody else trying to hold you accountable to kind of push through that incubation, or whatever.
yeah. Is that where you were? Like, how old were you when you started?
I started playing drums about 8, and I just was one of those people that was like obsessed with drums and becoming able to play. And so I would cobble together, makeshift drum sets and just kind of work out grooves that were, just nonsensical, who knows where they came from or what inspired them or whatever, and then eventually got a drum set. First you have a toy, basically drum set, and then you convince or cajole or whatever to get a student grade kit, and then maybe someday a professional one. But yeah, I started really just figuring it out on my own as much as I could, and I would have lessons over the years, but they would never really be with like any one person for a long time. But I was in scholastic programs, from third grade on, so I was learning rudiments and how to read notation, and learning about dynamics and all that stuff from a pretty early age, which, although that wasn't drum set, you know, training, it of course it's going to influence your musicality and your approach to playing the drum set.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that music education is a valuable asset for everybody in school. It's a shame that our elementary schools, music allotment is usually like one little block a week, or it's not that much. Maybe I'm hyperbolizing the lack there, but I think that getting at it very early I started when I was about 7 too. I don't think that it's ever too late. I think I have plenty of adult students coming to learn a new instrument. I teach a guy named Frankie Turner. I'm gonna shout him out. He's a great old guy who just wants to learn taps on trumpet, and
Yeah.
we've been working on it for like over a year, just trying to get him to the
Determination.
trumpet basics. Yeah. And and it's discouraging sometimes to see some younger trumpet players, get a little bit more progress happening, because I think our brains are more like elastic at that age, and, little sponges.
It's interesting. I've had that debate with not too long ago, actually. I think we were talking about this on some long van ride home to Asheville from some gig somewhere, and we were like, what is your facility at different ages, and how does it change? Obviously when you're younger it's easier to learn this stuff, but if you have that musical inclination, or whatever kind of natural abilities, or could you still tap into it at a later age, or not? Like let's say like I used to paint, and when I was in high school, and I'm pretty certain I can't paint like I could then.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I wonder if I could get back to it still, or if that was like that moment in time when I had to develop it, and because you didn't, you're never going to have that same potential.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know the answer to that, but obviously you can learn things at an older age.
Definitely.
But can you like achieve what you could have achieved had you started earlier?
You certainly can't get the same number of practice hours in the books.
No, that's always the case. But I guess I know a lot of multi-instrumentalists that seem to have just one day been like, I'm gonna play this one too.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're not spring chickens, and they're still seemingly able to transfer whatever other knowledge they have to that instrument. And obviously that's intra musical, but I just think the art, there's such a beauty in rediscovering or reincorporating art in our lives at a later age, I think. And I just, even as an artist, there are so many other mediums.
Definitely. I've got like a paint set upstairs that I've been procrastinating on getting back out for a long time. I love painting. I do think music is a unique art in that, like, we have all these little tiny muscles, that you have to be working out all the time to get to that higher level.
Yeah.
Whether it's your embouchure for trumpet, or our hands for guitar and drums. And it's almost like a one-to-one relationship of, like, the stronger that these muscles are, the more dexterity and, like, capability you have for accuracy, to express yourself. And maybe it's just because you have to put in those hours to build the muscles that you're building the accuracy at the same time. Or, I wonder if if it is the strength of a muscle that gives you better expression, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously there's a degree of like, endurance that we all build up in our respective instruments, and people are like, how do you keep doing that for so long or whatever it is? And at a certain point, you don't think about that. You're thinking about the other aspects of music, not the physical limitation. You're thinking about
Right.
technique, or you're thinking about uh, the concepts that you can incorporate, or the ideas more so. But it's also it's the synapse, the effortless reactions that are not bad habits, but ones that contribute, at the end of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how do we tap into that, without interference, basically.
That like flow state.
The flow state,
Yeah.
the oh no, we said flow state.
I know, I know. I don't, have you ever had, or like, I know, I'm guessing you have had that experience where like you show up for the gig and it's like sound check or rehearsal, and maybe you had like a gig the night before and the day before that or something, and you're like sore and you're like, how am I going to play this gig? But then when the gig starts, I feel like that goes away, that soreness, you know?
Yeah, sometimes surprisingly, being tired will lend itself to being, more relaxed and uninhibited, because you're so tired, you're looser, and so you're not,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you don't overthink things, or you don't have the same rigidity that you might if you're all like fresh and like so
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that surprises me sometimes, where I'll be like worn out and I'll still have a fun gig where I felt like I was able to express myself.
Yeah, it can be really uplifting, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Did you get right to it after UNCA? I had to take I took a little break of off of playing music, you know.
I um kind of got to it while I was in UNCA, which was a little bit of an issue for attendance,
Oh yeah.
because the last year and a half or so, I was playing in a band that was trying to start doing a little touring, and that was hard with making it to all the classes, or with getting assignments done. But luckily, got through school without messing up too much or anything. Um,
Hmm.
and after graduation, um, worked with that group a little longer and a few others. For the few years after I graduated, I was still gigging, at a relatively active level. And then I kind of got scared of, you know, how I could support myself through music in the long term. And I'm like, maybe I need to hedge my bets. And I got a real estate license, and still have one, and still will do real estate deals. But that was in 2010. So about a year after I graduated from college, and then tried to weave that together, like play music and do real estate. And they were pretty symbiotic, certainly schedule wise, because of, you know, real estate daytime, music at night, both flexible, schedules, etc. But the real break for me came when I had my son, Jasper, in 2015. I really stopped playing gigs for about 2 years, and was just helping his mother do, raise a young infant, and that was just too consuming at the time for me to really keep going with all that. But then one day I woke up and was like, I cannot let go of this part of my identity, and I put in so much work, and it's been such a passion, singular passion, that has been, the main sort of vein of my life, that I was like, like anxiety struck me one day, and I'm like, I have to get out and play and gig, and like reintroduce myself to the scene.
Yeah.
And that was in like 2017. And when I started going back out to the jams in town, and still had a lot of friends and connections from the years of playing previously, but definitely had to work my way back in, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, that was my little hiatus, my 2 years from 2015 to 2017.
Well worth it, I suppose. That's what
It was
better
necessary,
reason to take a break.
It was necessary, I guess.
But I hear that necessity to get back to it too. I can't imagine people stepping away, who are that deep into it. I've talked to other guests about, just that compulsive nature to play music, to practice. I'll get in a grumpy mood if I'm not practicing enough and or playing enough. And I wonder if it's just because I've spent so much time doing that repetitive sort of like over and over, therapeutic sort of thing.
Music
That,
is therapy.
yeah, absolutely.
And I've realized that more and more in the past years, maybe getting older and having more stress. But yeah, for me, it's definitely one of the only times when I can really clear my mind of errant thoughts, particularly ones that I don't want to be consuming my thinking. And so
Mhm.
music, I really feel like I can be present, completely with it, because all I'm doing is listening to the other players or thinking about how to accompany, but I'm not thinking about just random thoughts that, are, plaguing my conscience, or whatever.
Like, it's guilty about that weird thing you said at that party, or like, oh, I gotta pay the power bill, or
Yeah.
oh, I gotta
Whatever
just
random,
all of that
not
stuff.
just the random gnats, thought wise, but also the real, like, the cyclical kind of things that you're struggling with, whatever it is in your life. Music really gives me an escape from those problems as well.
Yeah, yeah, it can if I let it. I think it's interesting as a drummer, I get interesting to me the contrast like that. I am by myself like a lot of the time, when I'm practicing or playing like out at weddings and stuff. But I guess as a drummer, you don't have a whole lot of solo gigs, do you?
No, I do not have any.
Even though I think that would be so cool for cocktail hours, like Birdman style. It's like background
Especially
drums.
there was a time when I really was interested in trying to incorporate some of the more tonal percussion in a performance setup, like some vibes or some keyboards, and try to make a set or write some material that would lend itself to a more solo show. But
Hmm.
that was at a time when I was like spending a lot more sort of alone time in a music room of my own and whatever, and was like, what do I do? How do I get out of here? you know, but but
Yeah.
yeah. Luckily, I have a lot of great connections with musicians and play live a lot, which gives me that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a whole other exhilarating feeling to be out there, like you're saying, listening to other musicians. There's an audience watching you. There's this pressure on, but it's like a fun, like you're playing music. It's sort
Hmm.
of like uh playing in the sandbox sort of play fun, but it doesn't. You can't just like check your phone or like get on Facebook in the
No,
middle of that.
yeah, you can. You gotta be paying attention, and certainly, if you're playing with good players, and you don't pay attention, it's gonna show because they're gonna be like, what is this guy doing? He's not
Outer space
not
over there.
not with us, or not complimentary, or is maybe if you're listening to themselves too much and maybe pulling it in a direction that is not tasteful or something. So I think that's the necessity of it. You have to be present if especially if you're going to play well, and then you get the benefit of that kind of catharsis.
Yeah, definitely. Well, prepare yourself. I don't know how present I'll be later during our jam. We'll find out.
Oh well, it's that's the great thing about jams is that, and when people talk about any kind of anxieties about going to these jams and getting up there with not knowing what material is going to be played, or you know if they know it, is that that is what you should hopefully get comfortable seeking, is that the enjoyment of that. Like personally, I probably get more anxiety going to gigs that I've rehearsed a lot for, because I'm like thinking about all these changes that I've had to remember, all these, hits or rests or whatever, versus going to these gigs where I have no idea what I'm going to be playing or anything. It's like, well, like,
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna jump in and swim and do my best to keep my head above the water, and hopefully they'll call me again.
Yeah. Yeah, how does that, I was gonna ask, how does that work with Emerald Empire? Do you get a set list prior to the gig, and is
Yeah,
it often the same songs, or are you learning a lot of tunes for that?
I will get set lists before the gig, and occasionally with not too long before the gig for sometimes I'm subbing for another drummer last minute because they maybe got a better offer that they can't pass up, or they have a family emergency or something. And in those cases, it's sometimes I'm like looking at the set list as I'm driving to the gig for the first time, and I'm like on my phone, like listening to some pop song that I've never heard before, trying to listen for any kind of tricky parts or for the feel, taking some notes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But luckily, when you do these types of gigs, you do start to um, have the repertoire um, at hand a little more. So you'll kind of go through a list of 40 songs, and you already know 35 of them. You've already played 35 of them. You might need to brush up on some parts or whatever, but there's hopefully only like five that you've like, who is this person, and like, what is this song,
Yeah.
Um, and then, so what makes that a lot more possible is instead of having to learn 40 tunes, you're only learning a handful,
There is
per
that
gig.
wedding rep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to dance with somebody. What are some of your favorite go-to wedding
Right now, the
tunes? Yeah.
stuff, let's see, favorites, huh? The Bruno Mars stuff is a lot of fun to play. There's a handful of those that get pretty heavy rotation, and those are,
Yeah.
upbeat, funky, or uptown funky, if you will.
I will.
And so those are some fun tunes to play. There's, a lot of that four on the floor, like pop that I maybe used to snicker at when I was a kid because of the rudimentary, aspect. But it's a lot of fun to play that pop, and you really have to have a pocket if you're going to do it justice. And so it's an opportunity for you to kind of, you know, uh, check yourself and make sure that you're really grooving. So like that Dua Lipa stuff, or the um, what I'm thinking of some other artists right now. Lizzo, for instance, or you've got, there's a bunch of top 40 tunes that will kind of leak in and out of the wedding kind of repertoire. And it's interesting to see like how long they last. You still get a signed, sealed, delivered,
Oh
mixed
yeah, I
in.
get a lot of those this year. Yeah.
You might certainly get a September request. Uh,
Not a whole lot of 1,000 years anymore. That's faded away.
yeah,
Out of-
it's interesting how, like, I'm sure the Bruno Mars will have its resonance for a bit longer. Michael Jackson seems to have kind of waned a bit.
Mm,
Um,
I felt it. I felt it come back a little bit though. I
well,
was surprised
that's
it's
the
like
thing. Is like
survived.
there was the kind of real schism as far as like as far as like people are like, okay, we can't play this, and then there were like people that are like, but now can we play Billie Jean again? And it did come back for a minute, but I haven't played it in a year at a wedding for some, maybe a Billie Jean or two, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be as requested as like this Bruno Mars, still lots of country, of course. We're in the South,
A lot
so
of country,
play a lot
yeah.
of country.
That's tricky when I'm doing a chord melody on guitar, just because the vocal melody is often so like syncopated and full of like personality over these really straight ahead chords. The vocal melody often ends like on the one, which
Hmm.
is when I'm doing like these jazz chords or whatever, these voicings, it's difficult. It's sort of on top of itself in this weird way. I don't
Yeah.
know how to describe it, but I'm working on three for a wedding I've got this Saturday, And also, it's just not my genre. I'm trying to, it's an opportunity, I suppose, to enjoy, to find what is in it that I can appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of music I end up playing that I am not going to be listening to in a leisure setting, you know, because it's what we're being paid to learn to play for somebody. But I still enjoy playing a lot of it for one reason or another, just because it's just some kind of vibe that I don't get to do that often, or it's just like a little maybe even like almost like guilty pleasure kind of exhilaration, kind of thing, like playing some like Taylor Swift song or something at a wedding.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I mean, it's got like a groove to it, or else it wouldn't be a pop song. But but I'm not gonna then like on the way home or at least I haven't found myself being like, oh man, I want to shake it off again, like.
You don't need that taste wave fix.
I mean, or at least I haven't that I recall recently been like infected by some earworm, through these weddings where I'm like, oh man, now I've like been really into the Dua Lipa stuff now, or something.
Yeah.
Like, but it's still
Call Me
appreciate it.
Maybe got me back in the day.
I still appreciate it though, for sure. Yeah, the Call Me Maybe that had its. Were people doing that at weddings? I guess I wasn't playing weddings during that little season. The Call Me
yeah,
Maybe.
I think I did it for a couple.
I can see it.
Through another wedding management company. Yeah.
I always think it's funny when you're looking at like the lyrical content of certain songs that are played at weddings.
Yeah, that's...
You're like, oh, I don't know if this is the right. I don't know if this is the right one. Like, you guys listening to these lyrics? Like,
that's funny. If it's instrumental, maybe you can get away with it. Yeah. Let me do a time check. We got a few more minutes. Let's see. I've got a couple of emergent questions that I've gone to. Like, what are some problems that you've run into and solutions that you found for your career as a musician? Whether it's like a technical issue behind the drums, like getting, that bossa beat down, which I still can't get the clave and the 4-in-1.
So playing wise?
Playing wise, or maybe a technical issue of like a monitor setup, or maybe like or recording, or maybe maybe a career thing. Yeah, you mentioned going out late. One problem for me is like going out late because I have like such a...
Well, we can take it down to be real about it, right? I mean, as a musician in Asheville, which is a beer centric, or even beer capital kind of city, beer is a currency, certainly if you're a musician playing in places where they're serving drinks typically. And so you often are given a certain amount of beers, or a tab of some sort. And for years, I had this mentality of like, oh, I need to drink these beers because it's part of my pay package, And I don't want to leave money on the table, so I'm going to drink whatever they're going to give me. And typically they will only give you beer because that is either the thing that they're producing at that place, like in a brewery situation, or it's their more economical offering that they're willing to part with. And so for years I was drinking these beers whenever they're provided, and it was impacting my health. I think, I maybe was in denial about that for a while, but realized it and maybe didn't even do anything about it for a while, but finally decided I can't drink this much beer. Luckily I'm playing so much, but because of that, there are quite a few drafts being, presented to me, and it's just too much. A, it's not good to drink that much alcohol in general, and B, beer is extremely caloric, and
just bread. Yeah.
So I cut beer out of my diet about a year ago, and I do drink still, but I'll drink like a vodka soda. But not only, more on the solution side, aside from cutting out beer, I've also started to be really diligent about drinking water in between drinks.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever do that really before. And so it's kind of two-pronged there. Cutting out the beer, reducing the amount of alcohol intake, and being conscious about, how concentrated your drinking is while you're not only gigging but just out in general. But certainly that derived from the gigs and the free alcohol that is part of gigging life, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it'll be crazy. I was out playing a corporate event with Drayton
Hmm.
Aldridge, who's been on the show before. Great violinist, and he and we're jamming out. You know, we're doing our jazz. We're just messing around with some jazz in the background, and the bartender like walked up to us as we're playing. And like, do you guys want a drink?
Uh-huh.
Like right now? It's like we can't. I can't even talk to you barely. You know. I can't have a drink handed to me as I'm playing.
No.
I don't typically drink on the gig anyways because I get a little sloppier. But drinking is something that I've had to cut down a lot in my personal life too. I think, yeah, as you get older, I think that's part of it too. But going out late is like antithetical to my whole morning routine, which is when I get like practice going and exercise and
Well, and that's why you are more of an adult than me. Because I certainly am a, you know, a night, you know, person and go out, play late a lot, play a lot of gigs that go till 1 or so.
hmm
And then so you're out late by default right there. But also I just socialize with people that tend to hang out late at night, and because of the nature of our income, we don't have to be up early necessarily because the work is at night, you know.
yeah.
So it just kind of lends itself to a different lifestyle, but that lifestyle does not always lend itself to like diligent, like, you know, routine and like, you know, getting up early and exercising and, you know, clean living, as they say. But you know, it's about trying to incorporate those things and still hold on to whatever, you know, social things that were important as well, you know, and responsibly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a balance for sure. And the grass is always greener. Like I'm pretty much every night I'm like, "Oh, I could go out to the show, but like I don't know. I should, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you made the right call on most of those nights.
I don't know. Tonight, Fancy and the Gentleman is at Double Crown. That's calling my
Nice.
name.
I used to play in the previous iteration of that band.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it was
Okay, cool.
Rebecca and the Reckoning.
Oh right.
Yeah, yeah.
The Reckoning.
Drayton actually was often you know, one of the soloists in that group. Mhm.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I've had maybe all of them on. Craig the bassist, Kate the violinist, and Andrew Thelston the guitarist have
Nice.
all been on. This is me making up for not going out late at night. This
Yeah,
live
I like
stream.
it.
So
Bring him to you.
thanks
I
for
mean,
coming on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come into my studio. I have a little bit of creative control over the
yeah,
gigs. I just upgraded my like IO, so now over the next year I'll have more than one person on at a time and
nice.
start getting bigger
Little round
sort
table
of
action,
jams.
something.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of jams, I feel like we could get it started. Although,
Yeah.
are there any hanging threads about music or the life of a musician or jamming or problems and solutions
Well, not about any hanging
you see?
threads. You know, I feel super lucky to be one of the musicians in Asheville. Basically, you know, it's a great town. I feel like I put my cards down, you know, at the right time or in the right place, and I think we're all of us that are living here and working here in music, and I think we're super lucky, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's gonna continue to happen, and the rising tide will, I think, raise all of our musical ships.
I feel the same way. Yeah. Keep on coming to Asheville as far as I'm concerned, to
Yeah, you
everybody.
know, people complain about tourism, but I think it's actually going to be a real asset to the working artists here, you know, over the
Yeah,
years.
I think so. And what did you say the gigs that are coming up? The Paul Simon tribute at ISIS on
That is
when
the
is that?
17th of November, next Thursday. And then every Thursday, I'm at the One Stop doing the Fish tribute. Um, so we do a new set list every week, and we don't repeat any songs for about a month. So we always try to keep it fresh for people. Um, and that is called The Lumpy Heads, which is a reference to one of the Fish songs called Carini. But
Have you guys done Down with Disease?
we've done Down with Disease,
That's
definitely.
probably my favorite.
and the folks in that group are Hannah Ramsey on keyboards and vocals, Alex Bazemore on guitar and vocals. Uh, we have Ryan Crabtree on bass guitar, and then I'm also vocalist and drummer in that group.
Mm-hmm. Are you doing a lot of the lead vocals, like the Trey stuff?
Yeah, I'll steal some Trey. Alex will be like, Trey sings that one. And I'm like, I know, but I want to sing it. He's like, okay. And similarly, I'll do some of the Mike songs and some of the Page harmonies. So we'll kind of mix it up, and similarly, they'll do that. Steal parts from me that I'm like, hey, that's one I used to sing, and they're like, yeah, but I want to sing it, or doesn't Fishman sing that part?
Like whoever gets there first, sort of like, I'll take this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's all the three of us are singers, and there's always those melodies that are particularly shiny that everybody wants, and we're like secretly hoping that we can pick and choose all the cherries that we want, but you got to seed ground in order to make it work.
Yeah, I like singing. I only get to sing like 3 or 4 gigs a season, a year, or something like that. So they always come like just far enough away from each other to where I'm not like just singing regularly,
Yeah.
I'm still in that like sheepish phase a little bit. I'm like withdrawn when I'm singing.
Singing, the more, yeah, obviously, just like anything, the more we do it, the more comfortable we get, and the more we discover what our limitations are, and how to confidently avoid crossing lines.
Right. Cool. So the Fish thing, the Paul Simon thing, you're a drummer for hire.
Drummer for hire, yeah. Do lots of random stuff. Sometimes I'll do the Free Dead Friday or the Shakedown Sunday, which is another weekly events they do at One Stop.
That's like the Asheville venue.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the epicenters and musician hangouts, and I've done, I'll do some gigs with like Ryan Barber, just like funk and R&B. Sometimes I'll play with him, and maybe like Lazoom Bus or at like other local venues, and so yeah.
So I've always wondered about drumming on the Lazoom Bus.
It's an interesting experience,
sometimes?
man. It is fun without a doubt, unlike any other gig, but funny being a drummer because your hands are occupied, so you can't brace yourself in any way like
right,
you
I
would.
didn't even think about that. Yeah.
So you're like really, you gotta there's a lot of core workout going on there because you're like constantly, and you're trying to keep a solid beat. So it's a fun gig to really test yourself, and like see if you can pretend to play normally even though they're trying to shake you.
Right, yeah. That's pretty awesome. I know Drayton did like a whole Elvis shtick on one of the
really?
Zoom Bus
Nice.
things. Yeah. Are you like a Paul Simon character when you are doing that gig?
I haven't necessarily studied his mannerisms or maybe noticed some, but I'm trying to mimic his timbre, certainly. I don't get the more I prepare for this, the more I notice the differences in our singing voices. And because people are like, "Oh, you really sound like him," and I'm like, "No, I don't." Like,
Yeah.
But I'm tricking people into thinking that that's what they're hearing.
Nice. That's a good sign. Yeah.
I'm trying to mimic his timbre and obviously, the melodies and the phrasing as closely as I can. Just like I think anybody, subconsciously will kind of find my own little ways of approaching certain hooks, and they become habits, and then you'll listen to the original and you're like, oh, I don't quite do it that way. Like, I guess I like the way I do it a little better, but I need to change it back to the way he does it because that's authentic.
So there is a going for the authenticity thing. I've been part of cover bands before, cover projects. Like the Asheville Music School put on Beatles, like we would cover a whole Beatles album for the fundraiser every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the first like 3 or something. I remember the very first one, I like around the same time had just heard the Flaming Lips version of Sergeant Pepper's.
Oh.
And I was like, so we're gonna do like crazy stuff, like whatever we want. And then it just turned out that we played it basically how Sergeant Pepper sounded. I was like, but I like getting weird and
Yeah,
out there,
reinterpreting music is, I think, a great thing for musicians to try their hand at. As far as changing the style, changing, there's the basic, just changing the tempo or the arrangement or the lineup rather. But more interesting, changing time signatures or changing, the chord, progression, reharmonizing things, or
Yeah.
uh, playing it in a different style that is maybe really left field, so or changing uh, genders. There's certainly lots of songs out there that people think of as a song that a woman sings, and it doesn't need to be that way, or vice versa. And you can, even if you have to change one word to make yourself comfortable saying it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, agreed, definitely. And in the world, if you're in like a jazz ensemble, all making a pop tune like a bossa is
Yeah.
always like a fun go-to.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, Stevie Wonder, My Sharia More is like a great bossa choice.
I think, yeah, funk, bluegrass, reggae, Latin, those are some of the easiest sort of overlays for a song to be, put through another lens musically. Let's try it as a bossa. Let's try it as a reggae. Let's try it, let's play it bluegrass style. I mean, and
That's true.
there's so many melodies that you can pretty easily, alter to, and it's usually just, a little bit of a rhythmic change in the way you execute the lead melody.
Yeah, it's interesting. All of those are straight eighths, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little more difficult to make a song swing.
And yeah, some of them just has a little flavor that you have to how to introduce to make it, to give it that particular sound. But
Yeah. Is the kick on beat 3 essential for reggae?
well, there are different types of reggae beats. The one drop is the most famous and ubiquitous, cliche, or there are all sorts of ways to look at that. It's appropriate in a lot of reggae, but I certainly like a lot of the other varieties too, and sort of like that 4 on the floor kind of like pop groove. The one drop kind of falls into that category of like, oh, it's like a crutch groove, where yes, you can certainly use that, but maybe do something different to try a different approach, and maybe that'll give you some new ideas. But then again, sometimes if it calls for it, it's what it needs. Sometimes something seems cliche, but it's because that's what's appropriate.
Yeah, keeping it simple is sometimes the best solution for sure. Well, speaking of unconventional, I think I had you do your plugs. Not quite at the end here, but that's all right. We still have more of the show to go. We're gonna take a little break, and then we're gonna come back with some jams. Maybe starting with the reggae vein.
Oh no!
Now I'm feeling it.
Okay.
Well,
I'll have to get my. I shouldn't have talked about my fondness for other groups, because now I have to pretend like I know a lot of others.
yeah, let's do the whole gamut. I don't know what we haven't even talked about what we're gonna do with the jams. So
oh no, we don't need to.
It's one of those moments.
We just fly into it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We didn't rehearse for this.
I'm no reggae drummer.
All right. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back. last guest had set the loop to free, so they weren't syncing. Sorry if that's very confusing.
Oh no, it was
all
fun. It was
synthy.
actually fun. I was like, you know, hey, this is difficult but fun.
What is happening? Yeah. I like this this ambiguous time that you've got going on over there. That's a really cool like jazzy effect to just like let things be open like that.
Yeah, I was just listening to the loop you had. And I'm just gonna try to be musically, just like follow that, you know,
Yeah.
instead of trying to, you know, set the course or be rigid. You know?
Well, why don't you set something up this time? But also, can you hear everything okay?
I can hear pretty well. I could have heard that that synth a tiny better.
Yeah, you've got volume over there. That's what I walked over there to turn up the synth for both of us.
just going all over the place, just listening for different patterns and things to play off of, or different ways to feel it, or different accents to accompany it with, whatever.
Awesome, perfect. Well, there's plenty more where that's coming from. I know the loops can get a little bit boring and stagnant, but I feel like the live drummer really pulls it together. Can keep it fresh, keep it moving.
100%.
Curious. I'm gonna take just a second.
And that's always the trouble, being, or even, thinking about being one of these solo artists who does this looping stuff. You really have to learn how to write material that lends itself to having some movement in it, even though there isn't sometimes, like harmonically, with one loop, and then find ways to kind of play around it that give it some feeling of some kind of sections to it still,
Yeah, definitely. And that's good. That's built into some of the technology with like series looping, where you can
I'm ignorant to that stuff for sure.
Yeah. You can do cool. Like a verse loop and then a chorus loop.
That's dope.
Ooh. All right, it sounds great. Just good to check.
There was some cool stuff in there.
I felt it was locked in.
I lost it a few times, as is, of course it happens when you're just going for it with these kind of like loop settings too. Especially because I'm not used to playing with somebody that does this, but I still love it.
All right, yeah, cool. Yeah, let me know if you want any more or any less of anything.
Yeah, I think I have enough to keep me from going too far. If I have too much of you, then it gives me too much freedom. I have to have some restraint here.
I'll make it clear like that. I find the simpler almost the better with the,
my timing because I would like lose it and I'd be like for a minute and then it would come back and I'd be like, okay, good. So,
Oh, yikes. Huh, I wonder what's doing that. Let me double check on the connections over here.
yeah, it seemed like just like a wire was maybe loose because it would like just be for a second and then it would come back. But yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, and you can maybe mess with that golden connection. That might just make sure that's really
Yeah, I
together.
thought it might be like, but I wasn't, I was like, because usually it's one of those things where you're moving something, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's moving.
Your mic or your headphone cable is touching that cable, so maybe
Maybe.
arranging it. Yeah.
Yes.
One day I'll have a studio that works, and it'll be better.
Yeah, that was cool.
That felt
signal I was using. I was like, oh no, it's getting buried now. I can't hear it.
I know my wailing. I know it's difficult. I need like 6 compression pedals.
So what is the main looping station that you're using? Is that the thing down there?
Yeah, this big thing, the Head Rush looper board. I chose it because it has 4 ins and 4 outs that you can, set up however you want. So I can have the grandmother coming in 1 input and out 1 input, which is what I've got happening. So I can mix everything separately.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never even messed with those things. One of these days. One of these days.
They're pretty fun, yeah. One of the very first live streams, I didn't have the, now I've got the mics for the drums permanently set up with my new I.O. So they're always plugged in, but it hasn't always been like that. And I had tried to monitor them through the looper station too, but then every time I was looping, I was catching the drums too.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a train wreck.
And still,
at the
even
moment.
the bleed, as it is, I'm sure, is sometimes a factor as far as like.
Yeah, I'm sure it's getting in there through the trumpet mic a little bit.
interesting with those loops because if you really listen too hard, you'll like hear things that will push you or pull you, you know. But if you try to like sit back and just look at the big picture, you know, you can, you know, you won't get teased as much.
I think that's how the best like pro loopers are thinking about it, right? Here's this little vibe, and we're gonna bring in this to the atmosphere, you know, just piling in those layers of feeling.
Yeah, it's fun.
That being too.
Exploration.
Yeah. I'm trying to be.
I love that. I like that. Like that synth line you had there.
Oh, thanks.
That one was fun to play off of for sure.
Yeah, very pentatonic. Yeah, I should be looking at you more, listening more. Like we were talking about. I get into my own little world. I'm like, am I just inviting guests over so I can
Well, I mean,
do my thing?
it's one thing, you know, it's just two players. Obviously, you want to listen and vibe off each other. But this is like your thing you're doing, you know? Like I don't even know what the hell, you know, how to do all this, what you're doing. So I'm trying to like accompany this thing that you do. This is not a typical performance mode, you know? Certainly the people that I play with. So I'm like trying to just like do whatever I can to accompany you. So I think it's okay that you're in your own world. I need to be in your world, you know, for this.
Okay.
But like, you know, if there's like a few other people in the room, then I think it's like, unless we're all just doing that, we're like, okay, we're gonna play with this guy who does loops, and we're gonna try to make it cooler than it is without us, you know?
Yeah. I haven't thought about it that way. I feel the same pressure though. Like you're my guest on the show. I'm trying to do stuff that's showing you off. You know, that's not that's opening up doors for you to do interesting stuff.
Yeah, I feel like you've done that. So.
All right, sweet. Let's keep it up. Let's do something that's maybe not for. I don't know.
slow tempos, and then kind of work in like intricate, lower volume stuff, kind of to fill in the spaces,
Yeah. The nooks and crannies.
What's that?
The nooks and crannies.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's like watching Jeff Sipe play, I'm sure you've seen Jeff Sipe play. Okay.
Yeah.
Watching him play like a low tempo tune where like when I'm usually in that setting, I'm like, okay, I need to be simple and quiet, stay out of the way, don't do anything too busy. But he finds a way to do busy shit that sounds tasteful and cool still, that doesn't take away from certainly the tempo, but also the like musical, vibe. And so it's always interesting for me to watch that. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to stay out of the way. You just have to, be so good that nobody cares.
Yeah. Easy as that. Well, it's almost time, but do you want to do one more? I don't want to leave it on the slow tune.
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Do something weird sound.
plays and stuff throughout that. That's fun.
Yeah.
Or at the, different jam zones. Yeah. So, fun times, dude.
Lots of pentatonic. It's not out of the realm of the one staff, I feel like.
No.
Noodly.
Definitely not. No.
You weren't too far from home, maybe.
Brought the staff.
Well, I think people can hear me from this mic. Benjamin Falcon, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. A lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
Awesome studio you have here. And
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Great to connect on this level, man.
Agreed. Definitely. That was an awesome jam. Yeah.
Thanks.
You were very supportive of me. I felt cradled.
Great.
It's good.
That was my intent.
Good. We'll have to have you back, especially when I
love
get like a bigger group together. That'd be cool.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and
joining us.
thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you next week. All right.